Hello and welcome to this week's live stream. So we were going to continue through the general collection of modules that we've been going on through for a while now. But I just wanted to show some other stuff first. So right now, and of course, as always, give me a yell if everything sounds okay, or if you have any questions or anything like that. I just realized there was something I hadn't shown when we were showing some other things, delay. And it's a neat trick, so I think it's handy to know about. I just made up this patch now, and I can show you through how it works. It's stereo, so you'll need to be listening in stereo. Well, you may have missed some of the benefits that stereo can provide, if you remember that track. First one, I'll just show you what it sounds like. Oh, not need that gain on over there. So you see, we're getting a very clear ping pong there. It's alternating in slightly interesting ways between the two speakers. How am I doing that? You'll see that there's 3 delays here. So this delay, I've set it up for quite a long time, so they're each 1 second. Settings are pretty similar. This one is 1 second. Feedback is, something like that, high-ish. They're slightly different, but around that. Now this is the interesting delay. You notice this delay doesn't go through to the output, because I've got no dry signal routed here. So if I route some dry, that's how I'd normally route this, and now you get sounds more coherent. So that as soon as you play, sound comes out. That's the way this patch should be routed. I was showing the other thing first. So something's going to dry. This one doesn't go. This delay 1 doesn't go through to any of the dries, because the way the delays work is that the output of them is just the repeats. There's no dry. So the level of the delay is just the level of the repeats. This is a hugely useful technique because it means that you can easily put effects on the send or the return of a delay. If you want a flanged delay or something, you just put a flanger on the send to it or the return for it, depending on which thing sounds more fun. Often things on the return sound more interesting because then all the repeats will change. By send and return, I just mean the in and the output of the delay. Some people like to think in terms of send and return because it's more like a traditional mixer. Some people think of this as a modular synth with just ins and outs. Ins and outs is more flexible, truthfully, because there's lots of them, so it gets confusing when there's multiple sends and returns. But the interesting thing I'm doing here, this delay has feedback set to 0, no repeats at all. So what does it do? It just sends out the signal at a later time. So it just delays the signal without repeating it. And because there's no dry, it just sends out the delayed signal. So that means that one of your outputs, your left and your right, one of them, they're going to be delayed in time. So that means you get, and because I put the same times everywhere, all 3 delays have the identical time, which in this case I've done just by putting them in manually. The correct way, in my opinion, would be to do that, would be to use a ratio, any of the tempo producing modules, like the tempo ratio or a foot switch or any of those. Then you could set them up so that you can change in a single place and they all change their times together. which is neat. So that's how you get this offset. So it goes into one, then on the other one in the exact offset time, because I've chosen that time offset. If I remove the first delay or set it to 0, or turn it off, then both delays will be happening at the same time, and you'll just you'll get no you won't get that ping pong bouncing anymore. So yeah, that was just a technique that I haven't shown yet, so I thought it would be handy. So yeah, delays with 0 feedback can be useful for just delaying a signal. You can do this with CVs and stuff as well, so you can delay a trigger if you want a trigger to happen later. You can also do ratchets like that, but it's a little bit fiddly, in case you want a trigger to happen multiple times. But yeah, so that lets you do the basic thing of delay, of making things bounce around in interesting ways. So you can do obviously very complicated patterns by having a couple of them at different times, and then you can get into more freakishness. Oh yeah, general update about amp stuff for those who are interested in amp stuff. We are progressing. We've captured. We are capturing a few more amps, and we have captured a few more amps. Leon Todd, if you are familiar with his wonderful work, an amazing guitarist from Perth, from Western Australia. He's captured some amps for us as well. He knows a lot more about the higher gain stuff than I do, as it is not historically my area of expertise. I am historically not much of the shreddy type. My fingers are too slow. So yes, we have some more stuff happening on that. And we're working on, there's a couple of little bugs that people have found, so keep reporting them if you do find one. So we're fixing them up. And so yeah, that's all progressing. Hopefully the next one for people to test will be up very soon. So there'll be one testing version with being able to load captures from the internet that you find and stuff, and ones you make yourself. And they'll be in the same one. They'll be being able to do your own captures. So you'll do them with, you won't do them directly on the pedal. You do them on a website because they need to be trained. So we're setting up all the fiddly websitey bit. So once that's all done, then there'll be a training version of, a testing version of the firmware, and then the next one should come pretty soon after that, which will be the final one. I just want to do a testing one because the importing stuff is a bit fiddly, and lots of that needs to be improved because the importing stuff is a massive pile of arse at the moment. So we will continue with our regular scheduled programming, and we are up to M. Remembering there was a giant pile of MIDI. I don't think I went into enough detail with most of it, but again, if you have any other questions. So Min, we did Max the other day. Well, when we were at the start of M. Min is obviously the opposite. It's handy if you want to constrain a CV. So you could just finding which one of the two is the smallest. So easily, if you use min and max, you can set limits easily on a CV. So it's just controlled in a range. Anytime you want an LFO or something like that, of course it'll hard clip it. You can set it to have min and maxes on things. So you can use them anywhere you'd like that if you want to constrain a signal. Mix VCA, it's kind of like one of the other VCAs. This is just here for, don't use this one, really. It's not useful. It's complicated and annoying. I introduced it a long time ago, so this is one of the modules that's kind of here for backwards compatibility. Let's get into fun ones. Mono EQ. These are quite CPU expensive, so don't necessarily, if you want to just filter out a section, often the filters are much more CPU efficient. But the mono EQs are nice and powerful. Let's run our signal through this one. Because what we have here is a parametric EQ. So, how do you use it? If we strum a little bit, that's what my signal sounds like. Oh, yep, and I only routed to the right channel. Sorry about that. There we go. I'll route to both channels. That's what my signal sounds like. Now, if, for instance, we wanted these ones with the little boxes, they're shelving, so they're, there's low passes and high pass, basically. Whereas the other ones are, a specific band. And I can drag that over this way. And you'll notice that's the limit of that one. We'll start to remove all of our low. You see over here, the currently selected one. Oh, you can turn off this band as well with this slightly hard to get to button up the top. This one will change the resonance of that, and you can see how the resonance has changed. So now we've got this bit and it'll peak here. So, yep. The other end is exactly the same, so we can same kind of resonance options there. The middle ones, so it's, when you select one, the resonance for that one will be controlled. There you go. The middle bands will work the same. You can drag them around, draw the shapes you want. Resonance, again. You'll see how that controls. So we can get a very narrow peak here. You see that's... Oh, that's quite loud now. Yeah, so that's a very resonant peak there. I should turn that down a little bit. So yeah, it's very easy to draw, easy to make complicated EQ curves just by dragging stuff around. So that's the two controls you can use. You can use the, and there's a gain on this axis and frequency on that axis. This was one of the first UIs we did in the Beebo pedal, back when it was called Digit. I still think it's quite nice. It's obviously, it's not as fancy as some of the newer ones, but, probably does need a revision at some point, but it's still pretty good. Again, if at any point you have questions. So, that's EQs. Stereo EQ works the same when we get to that, and should be in an easier place to find. But, yep, that's EQs. Oh god, there are so many. And we're adding a new search thing at this very soon, mostly because navigating these ones vexes me a little bit. Cabs. We've used them a bit recently. What is there to know about cabs? Cabs are, you load impulse responses the same as you do with reverbs. Mostly with cabs, you won't want to run any dry as a separate signal, because the idea of the cab is that it'll be filtering all of your dry sound should be going through it, because that's usually how cabs work. What else about cabs? Oh yeah, they're 200 milliseconds long. They're just an IR loader like the reverbs. It's just the reverb IR loader is much, much longer. You want to use the cab loader because it's more efficient for short IRs. So yeah, if you're using a cab, use the cab loader. They can be up to 200 milliseconds long in my general memory, but which is definitely enough for any EQ, because the cabs are basically a complicated EQ. They don't really have much, they shouldn't be encoding time domain information very much, as far as cabs are what's called a linear time invariant system in math speak. So yeah, they shouldn't have much. that. This is how you choose cabs. Obviously, there's boatloads of them, including some nice ones from Leon, and lots of other ones. These are just the default ones. There is a great range of bass cabs as well. So yeah, there's a huge variety of sounds. Remember, just because something says, there's also some other stuff in here as well, because there's these tape machines. There's the IRs of tape machines. They can be quite interesting as well. Yeah, just because something that says it's for bass or guitar doesn't mean, or you can't use it on synths, or you can't use it on bass when it says it's for guitar, or the other way around. Use whatever makes you feel good. Also, I just moisturized my hands and I realized I now have stuff all over the screen. My hands are really dry. It's still pretty bad. It's like 3 degrees here at the moment, so it's cold and dry. After cabs. So that's how you select cabs. There's a gain in there as well, just to control your overall levels, because cabs can vary a lot. When you are importing a cab, it's handy to, unless there's some reason that you are importing a pile of different cabs and you want them to be balanced in some kind of volumey thing for some special magic reason, like you're doing something cunning, normally you'll want to normalize them. So just in Audacity or your audio program of choice, Audacity is free and easy, so it's good. Just select them, hit normalize. Then you will not have a problem. Oh, and they should be 48 kilohertz. If they're not 48 kilohertz, they won't import. So yeah, cabs, 48 kilohertz. Same for reverbs. Everything, 48 kilohertz. If you think, oh, it will be better quality if it's a higher bit rate, sample rate. No. Sample rates control what frequencies you can express. Bit depths control how much dynamic range you can have. 24-bit dynamic range is more than anything needs, and 48 kilohertz is much more than any of us can hear. At my age anyway, and anybody else who's, above 15 or 10, because you lose high frequency information as you get older normally. So yes, use the 48 kilohertz. What are we up to? Mono compressor. These are quite complicated compressors that take quite a lot of CPU. I am thinking about introducing some less fancy, simpler ones, but these ones work too. What does a compressor do, you ask? It controls dynamics. So it makes your quiet bits louder and your loud bits less loud. It's got all the controls you would most of the controls you would normally expect on a compressor. Ratio is how strong the compression is. It's written a little bit differently than normal, and I probably should change it to being a bit more normal display-wise. Attack time is how quickly the compressor comes on. Sometimes you want it to be, if you're doing synthy stuff, often you might want it to attack very fast or very slow and things like that. Release time should be obvious. Input gain is also probably obvious. That's just input gain. Release time is how quickly it releases after the signal gets below the threshold. Threshold is when it comes in. And ratio is just how strongly it compresses. So it's a nice thing for keeping your dynamics in a certain range, and also very useful on bass. So what else should I say about compressors? You nearly always want to control that input gain. If you need just gain somewhere else, if you want a compressor that's easier and has less knobs on it, but works nicely, the saturator is very good. It's just got input and output gain. And you turn up the input gain and you get more saturation, and then you can control your overall level with the output gain. So yeah, you'll definitely be able to just control that. There was just a question about tape stuff with the tape cabs. Yeah, and it kind of relates. So tape is kind of famous for its compression as well. So often you want to run a compressor if you want to be more tape-ish. If you want a tape delay, you can make that by having a delay and a compressor and a cab of a tape. But if you want less controls, the saturator works well for that as well. So let's show that. I'll try not to babble too much. So let's go to IRs, because there we go, mono cab. And then S is for saturator. So this is also a compressor, but much simpler controls. So if we turn these ones down and this one up, you'll get some compression. Squishes things down. Now if we grab they get a bit more characterful as they get pushed harder. Plus 6 dB. And we'll run that delay. So you can either run this on the repeats like this, or the other way around. If it's a compressor on the repeats, it'll make your repeats more consistent in volume. But as they fall off, the compressor will be doing more work, so it might change the depending on what type of compressor it is. Either the compressor will be pushing things up more if you're trying to have one that's stabilizing volume, or in the case of the saturator, they'll just have less happening to them. Or the bit crusher, they'll get more things happening to them on the repeats, depending on which way you do it. In this case, it'll be less stuff happening to them. So you could run this before the delay, or have it afterwards. So, and now, again, we'll have no dry signal, so we'll have to connect that up, like so. Just move these out of the way so they're a little bit that's messy. And see how that sounds. No, broke. Oops, sorry. Let's work out what's going on there. What's the level from these two, though? Oh, yes. That's better. All right, I might crank this guy up a little bit, crank my feedback up a little bit. Then I might turn this down a little bit, because this won't be adding much character, it'll just be adding volume. And then I'll go for more character and less gain here. So you can balance these ones out. Obviously the post gain, yes, okay, I had them around the wrong way. Read the signs. You want more pre-gain and less post-gain. Because pre-gain will give you more character than post-gain will. Post-gain will just be changing the actual level, whereas pre-gain will be changing the character of the compression. That's more what I wanted. Yeah, okay. Okay, so yeah, we've made something a little bit more tapey by cranking up that pre-gain to get some compression into the tape, using a tape IR with a bit of gaininess in it, and then using that on a delay. Obviously, you can run other IRs on there as well. Just, you know, I think, what's it sound like if it's through an amp? Different. Not hugely different though, but you know. So yeah, that's an explanation of that one. Back to the other things. How much? All right, we're doing all right for time. So yeah, that's a way to do things like that with the type bars, as asked. M. So where are we up to? We just did compressor. Oh yeah, so there are a range of compression options. Obviously you can build your own compressors as well, using VCAs and envelope followers and stuff like that. Or even other complicated ways you can do it with triggers and stuff too. And envelopes. It's not quite the same, but same kind of general idea. So now we get to the most fun things in my general opinion. So originally the main focus and reason for the pedal to be was my love and general desire and enjoyment of convolution reverb. Because I had long thought that convolution reverb is best reverb. Because you can capture actual real spaces and you can capture them yourself relatively easily, which makes it a hugely powerful technique. So if you haven't captured it, if you've found any nice spaces you like the sound of, remember that it's really easy to capture them. Just grab, I probably have one of those, right? Is it within reach? No, maybe it's not. Grab something like a Zoom H4 or any of those ones, those little stereo Zoom recorders, or anything else similar. If you've got a special fancy recording setup, that's fine too, but grab one of those little recorders, sit it in the middle of a room and pop a balloon. And that's the file. Trim that file down and you can import it into the pedal. It's that easy. Pop some balloons places and record them. Export them at 48 kilohertz, 24-bit or 16-bit. And they will work in the pedal. So yeah, that's one of the kind of recommended ways. It's getting a bit more sunny here. One sec. We are getting more sunshine. Sorry, there's a very large skylight above me, so. Yeah, definitely grab reverbs yourself. Oh, shit. Yeah. Not sure if I just looked over and the YouTube was freaking out. So I'm not sure if you caught that last few seconds of me ranting about reverbs. Please tell me if you you did or did not. Yeah. Hopefully you just heard all that rant about reverbs. Anyway, the gist was capture them yourself. Pop balloons. We've done videos on them before, showing how to capture them and record them. It's really easy. Pop a balloon. Record it. Please tell me if, in the comments, if you missed the last few seconds though, because if there was a weird gap or something. Because, yeah, the streaming thing just said that there was a problem, but it's now saying things are okay, so I hope they are, really. So just give me a L if there was a problem there. So yeah, I'm now going to show some reverbs. We're almost done with M. It's gone on for so long, but we're almost done. Mono reverbs. Again, you'll need to route your dry separately. And then we'll just route that one to both. And then you choose an IR. So remember, you can load random stuff in here as far as if you want to try what it sounds like to have, use the IR of a train whistle. There is actually, there's a wonderful player who did a bunch of really cool captures of different stuff and use them, and it's on the Facebook group. Check out, there's a couple of people that have put up really cool collections of different reverbs. Yeah, cool. Just things, streams still working good. Yeah. So you can capture vintage gear. Again, convolution is, kind of fantastic for capturing stuff like that. Brackets, perfect. So yeah, you can capture springs, plates, all this kind of stuff. So, this AKG spring is quite lovely sounding. It's a big studio spring. So that kind of stuff is very pretty. It gets pretty huge on this setting. Again, you can use this to control the overall level of that. Often, I'll show you some more reverbs first, and then I'll show you how to do some interesting things with the reverb. Because again, you can do the same techniques with that I did with the delay. So again, the reverb is just sending out its tail, so you can have things on the send and the return of the reverb, which is one of the most important techniques in Beebo, being able to do things in paths, in parallel, or in serial. So you've got all these. I'll show you one more of the analog ones. The EMT plates are pretty fun. These dark plates are really chunky. So if you don't want to be buried at the bottom of the ocean, you can turn that down. If you want to run a wet-dry afterwards, and wet-dry module afterwards, you can do that as well. And then you have more control over your dry level in case you really want to be at the bottom of the ocean. You can turn that down to just get a little bit of that. Oh, yeah. You may notice I have forgot to route my dry to this output, and that's what was confusing me there. So yeah, great for that stuff. Obviously, you can capture any of your 80s kind of stuff. It won't capture, so IRs are fantastic magic that will capture any linear time invariant system, which is any real reverb of a real space. So if you go into a giant church and you want to capture that perfectly, IRs are the tool for the job. They, however, won't capture any modulation because no real space... no normal real space changes its reverb over time, unless you've got a space that changes its, size over time or something like that, which would be pretty exotic. They capture real space over time, but obviously modulation is something you can do in reverb as well. In the case of IRs, you'll have to do that on the send or the return. Return usually being much more characterful. So you can capture all of these vintage, what's called a range of different, 80s rack gear. How different does it sound to these things? It sounds the same because that's how IRs work. If you want to sound the same, it sounds the same. But again, if they've got modulation in them, it won't capture the modulation. This one, that's quite short. I assume flat plate would be quite longer. small and bright. All right, you get the gist. That one's bigger. That one's quite fun. Yeah, that's quite fun. But truthfully, the good stuff is the real spaces, because you can capture actual real spaces that are in places. Studio B in Nashville, these caves near where I was born, in central Queensland, in the northern part of Australia. People always assume caves are going to be really big, but they come in a range of sizes, it turns out. These ones aren't particularly giant. This is this actual factory here when it was empty, where I'm showing right now, and it's incredibly reverberant. Yeah, when we first moved in, it was actually difficult to talk inside before we put anything in here. But yeah, you see there's all these places all around the world, London Palladium, Shepherd's Bush, tons of places, car parks, and the Pool of the Black Star, which I love. For obvious reasons, because it sounds fantastic, in my opinion. So this is an acoustic lens built by the Freemasons in the Manitoba Legislative Building in Canada. Okay, say you have your beautifully wonderful sounding reverb. You want to do some fun stuff too, because you don't like how you want some control. Real spaces are amazing, but again, very minimal control. So let's change the send to the reverb. We can grab a filter. So we've got a range of filters. And there is a button somewhere over here that says filters. Yep. So we have a range of filters. Let's give this one. And on the send instead, we can decide which one of these we want. We want to have a high pass because we want to get rid of we want to let the highs pass through and remove the lows. That means we can change how much of the low signals get sent to the reverb. Often you want to dry those. You don't want your bottom end to be too boomy. If we increase this up, we're just getting reverb on the very high. So it's not changing the characteristic of the reverb itself, because it's on the send. It's changing what's getting sent to the reverb. So we might. So yeah, see, it's quite just stops that from developing that boominess. All right, now. So that's nice. We've got this flexible reverb. We can, same trick with the delays. If you want to have a delay at the front, you can add pre-delay to your reverb. So in case you want to separate that out more. Same trick on the send. Now, say we have this beautiful sounding reverb, but we want to get it to sound a bit more big and crazy and fun. Then we grab a module of our general preference for making things sound crazy. That would be time stretch. Left in, right in. We'll use this one has got a blend in it. We will not worry about. You could have a wet dry at the end of this. Normally I'd run this with a wet dry at the end as well, just so I've got nice control over the whole levels of things. If in doubt, wet dries are handy. They also let you have a nice controllable single point for levels. But here we can make our normal reverb. We can set the blend up on this. We'll crank our diffusion up. We don't want to get feedback to get too crazy because that can get pretty hectic. Obviously you can start to see now you've got that little We're not going to use the actual reverb in here because it's pretty garbage. But that's starting to get kind of fun. Size and diffusion are interacting really fun ways. Diffusion will make it seem less like single repeats of a... See, that's got that dunk, 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 dunk individual kind of feel of delays, whereas this one gets a little bit softer in those. Set our stereo spread up. If you set size way down, it starts to become quite a different character as well. See? Position is quite interesting too. So yeah, position. Obviously, we're going to have an actual run through of time stretch, but you know it's a granular-based effect, so it's grabbing little grains and stuff, doing stuff to them. But you can see how you combine effects, and this is now making that reverb do anything you want for a reverb. You can have crazy pitch-shifted reverbs if you want. Let's not get too hectic on the pitch. There's your, crazy pitch shifted reverbs. So yeah, very powerful control on by composing sticking different modules together. So even though the actual mono reverb convolution block doesn't have a lot of controls, you have all the filters you want before or afterwards, delays, reverbs. Time stretches, all these kind of effects that you can really get creative with. All right, and to finish off today, we will have the last of M, the very end of M. And it's a pretty fun one, the multi-resonator. This is the synthesizer, but also a lot of other things. You can use the multi-resonator in many, many ways. Controls are pretty straightforward. It's based on rings by Mutable Instruments. If you click the magic button here, you'll get the manuals for rings. We'll leave all of these things on. It's got a bunch of different modes. And you can use it. You can excite it different ways. You can use it like a... so sitars, if you are familiar with sitars, they've got strings that you play and strings that you don't play. That sympathetic ones, that you can use it like that you can have some signal that you put in and then it sympathetic resonates with, or you can drive it from a synthesizer. So we'll try from a sequencer, sorry. I'll put down the guitar for one sec. I'll show you it. I'll show you a little bit of it with the. I need to pick up the pace on this one a little bit, but I'll show you it with the Chaos controller is really easy. So we'll show it. You can do the same thing with any of the sequences, any of the triggery things. Let's put a VCA at the beginning because we don't want to deafen people yet again. So let's be very generous with that one. So yeah, it's got different like signals it sends out. They're called odd and even. You can process these things differently depending on which mode you've got it set up in the polyphony modes. They'll do different things. In this case, we're just writing them all into the bit here. Now we'll grab some triggers in. We'll trigger to strum. We could use strum for the strumming. Actually, maybe I'll do that. I'll try this and then I'll show strum for strumming. We'll use X to a pitch. We'll turn up our rate and our, where's our spread? X, spread. 2 octave spread. Internal control. Good. Now let's route this one to an output. Cool. That's the physical modeling resonator doing its thing. And it's a fun sound. Isn't it? Good thing you go. So there's lots of options here. They make different sounds. You get the gist. You can play through these. This one's kind of different sounding than the others. Again, these will work differently in the polyphony modes. Basically kind of try and make notes overlap or not. It's still monophonic input as far as volts per octave. Like it doesn't have MIDI input, so you can't. It's only got one trigger input. So the polyphony nodes are more about how it overlaps existing notes. So it's more like sustaining the existing notes. Tone knobs. All of this can be modulated again, as with all of these ones. The modulation is controlled by these ones. So these are VCAs on the modulation inputs. Oh, sorry. Attenuverters, because they go both directions. Attenuverters on the modulation inputs, so they can invert the modulation as well. These are all the thingies. They're controls. What these do are a bit vague, because it's a physical model, but it's kind of a pretty vague conceptually one. So yeah, dampening does kind of, makes things more damp or not, so you get more sustain or less sustain. Brightness does what it says on the box. Structure changes the sound. Who knows how that one actually works? Now that we've got some pretties, that's pretty straightforward. For the last thing for today, because this is the last module in M, obviously, yeah, route things into these. If you want to route a modulation in, like the LFO or something, looping envelope, route that into here and then just turn up the modulation parameter that you've routed in to control that. It'll be then modulating around the point you've chosen here. We've got internal exciter on at the moment, but we can take in external sources for the excitation. We can show that with guitar or something. There's a patch called sitar something that sounds is using the multi-resonator to try and make your guitar sound more sitar-ish. It somewhat succeeds. But yeah, so you can route signals into it as well. I'll show this one quick second with strum. Strum. Again, strum really needs a little bit more testing, but gate goes to strum. Volt per octave goes to pitch. Oh yeah, that's pretty fun, isn't it? Obviously you can choose different sounds in here. Oh, that's the vocal one, I think. Is that? Yep, things, okay. This one's pretty hectic, if I remember correctly. That's kind of pretty with the thing. And that's with that polyphony mode, if we turn down. See the different overlappiness? Let's go up a few keys. Yep, that's pretty. So yes, obviously yes, you can use the resonator in other ways as well as an actual effect instead of a synthesizer by routing signal into it. It's a bit weird. So if you turn the internal exciter off, then it will be looking for external excitation. And it can be interesting. But you'll have to get to the right kind of level sometimes. Which I'm a little bit... Oh, I've got a plan. Turn this guy a little bit down. See that? I don't know if you can hear that clearly. So I'm playing my guitar into this. And I'm getting this quite interesting confusing. So you can get some interesting things out of that. So this I'm strumming and changing the note at the same time. So it can change the pitch of the, what's called, resonant. So some of these will work better in the context of this thing. But yeah. So you can have different excitation sources, and you can get some interesting effects out of that. So yeah, if you have any questions, give me a yell. Otherwise, that is the end of M and the end of this week's live stream. Thanks again for watching the thing. And yeah. Yeah, should have, so we're on to N the next week. Yeah, thanks everybody for checking it out.